What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a breakdown of Loki episode 5, Journey into Mystery. This episode had so many Easter eggs and like little teasers and a bunch of scenes that credited a lot of stuff that happened in the comics and a bunch of multiversal shit. So I'm so excited to break it down. I'll be doing a chronological breakdown of the episode as well as in the end doing my top 5 questions for the finale. So without further ado, let's get right into it. For part number 1, we see Ren Slayer talking to Sylvie. And she's like, oh, I don't know who the timekeepers are either. I'm curious to find out all this. And I still feel like she's almost playing dumb. I feel like she does know what's really going on. I feel like she's just trying to get the other TVA agents to come in and rescue her. But you can tell during the conversations that they're having that Ren Slayer doesn't want Sylvie to find out the truth about the TVA and how it started or who created it or who's pulling the strings all along. So my prediction for her is I think she might be working with whoever's in charge. Biggest theory is I'm thinking it's going to be King the Conqueror. He's in charge of this whole situation, and she is his right-hand man. So who knows? Or right-hand woman, I guess. But that was it for number 1. Let's move down to number 2. For number 2, not a huge Easter egg that I was able to break down specifically, but throughout the entire landscape of this time dump, I guess we can call it, it's just there's huge head statues all over the place. So I was wondering, could those be like Celestials? Could those be like the head of Nowhere, the one that we saw in Guardians of the Galaxy? Or are they just a bunch of like, nonsense statues throughout like all of history? But I thought it was a little Easter egg that they could have threw in. And I saw the episode a few times and I couldn't break down exactly who they were. So in the comments below, guys, if you guys know whose heads those statues belong to, let me know. With that, let's move down to number 3. For number 3, we have Prime Loki, our Loki from the original timeline, talking to classic Loki, the guy in like the goofy outfit, child Loki, and then the Loki that looks like he's trying to become Thor, and then obviously alligator Loki. And he asks child Loki, oh, what was your Nexus event? And he said, he turns around like a badass. He's like, yeah, I killed Thor. So that would have been so sick to see if they showed a little flashback, especially because they're still young. So Thor might not have his like full powers. I would like to see how kid Loki would have, somehow used his enchantment or his sorcery to kill him and get the best of him. So just something I thought would be pretty cool if they would have showed it off. But with that, let's move down to number 4. For part number 4, we get one of my favorite Easter eggs of the episode, the Thanoscopter. I just thought it was so sick that they were able to introduce it. I thought it's a pretty goofy little concept from the comics. Obviously, you get a badass villain like Thanos and he has a little helicopter in his own name. So I just thought it was a little Easter egg, cool to share it, and let's move down to part number 5. Easter egg number 5 and number 6 are literally back to back in the same frame. We see a version of Thors Hammer. So quick little theory I had was that maybe once the end of this series happens or whatever, and they end up destroying the time void at the end of time, that hammer will end up somehow back in Earth 616 or the mainstream timeline or the sacred timeline, and that's how we can have the Thors Hammer for Thor Love and Thunder, because we know that Captain America took the hammer back to Thor the Dark World from the events of Avengers Endgame. And then right after Thor's hammer, we see Throg. He's like a Thor version of, or he's like a frog version of Thor. He's stuck in a little jar. He's trying to get out, trying to reach the hammer. So I thought that was pretty funny because he's one of the most like obscure characters. Similarly to like Beta Ray Bill or something along those lines. So I thought it was pretty cool that they showed a little teaser, a little Easter egg for him. With that, let's move down to part number 7. For part number 7, we have Loki explaining to the other Lokis in their sanctuary or whatever, how they were all destined to die, and he was wondering if what happened to them with Thanos and whatever. And then classic Loki, or the older Loki as I'm gonna call him, he says the same thing happened, Thanos was gonna choke me or whatever. So does that mean every other timeline goes through the same events that the Sacred Timeline goes through? It's just they're different actors per se. That was one question I had. But he tells Loki that he uses one of his projections to look so real, Thanos ends up killing the projection while he's hiding in the back, and then he just escapes and goes on to live off wherever he wants. So, one, his projections are on point. He definitely knows how to use his trickery or spell or magic, whatever you want to call it, to the highest ability, as we see especially later in the episode. And then 2, he said that he went off to live on some planet all by himself for a very long time. So that means if Loki would have survived Endgame or Infinity War, he would have been somebody who survived the snap. So that was just something I was thinking of, because then Thor and Loki could have been together during the entirety of those 5 years after Infinity War. And you know, it's crazy to think how different it would have been had Loki been there for Thor, or you know, vice versa. So with that, let's move down to part number 8. For part number 8, we see Sylvie. She pruned herself. She ends up in the time void, or whatever we want to call it. She wakes up in this huge nest within a truck, and there's these 2 or maybe 3 multiple big ass blue eggs. Not sure what that means, but it'd be pretty cool to see if maybe one of those hatched, or if we find out that those are like eggs of a dragon or some shit. I don't even know, but I thought it was pretty interesting. She obviously barely makes it out alive, and then starts running away. She gets a little brief enchantment with the storm cloud, I think it's called Goliath, and then my boy Mr. Broke Nose himself, Mobius, comes in with his pizza car, picks her up, and they drive away. So with that, let's move down to number 9. For number 9, it's another panoramic view of the landscape as they're driving away, and there is the pyramids of Giza and then the Sphinx. There's not much of an Easter egg, but it had me thinking, if they had to breach this entire timeline, or prune the entire timeline I should say, then what happened around that timeline that we know of in Marvel Comics? I was thinking maybe Apocalypse was born, or he was created at that time, in that timeline or whatever. He started creating these pyramids like he did in the movies that we've seen in X-Men, and something went awry. They had to trim the whole timeline. So at face value, it just looks like other landmarks, but I was trying to dig deeper into it, and I was trying to see if maybe it could have been a connection to Apocalypse. Who knows? We'll see. With that though, let's move down to number 10. For number 10, another quick Easter egg. It is Thanos' ship, the big ass ship that we saw in Avengers Endgame. The one that Captain Marvel just flew right through with no problem when she was in binary mode. It's just laying there in the landscape. So it had me wondering if maybe there was a separate version, alternate timeline version of Thanos, a young version or something, who ended up having to get pruned by the whole TVA. That would have been a cool interaction to see how that went down. But just like I said, there's so many Easter eggs in this episode, so I'm just trying to break down all the main ones that I know. With that, let's move down to 11. For number 11, this was an Easter egg that I did not expect to see in the slightest bit. There's a statue of 3 heads laying together just somewhere in the landscape, and it is without a doubt the statue head of the living Tribunal. We had a name mention of the living Tribunal in the Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange movie, when Baron Mordo was talking to Doctor Strange, and he said we have different relics that can handle the power of the magic, and then he said this is the staff of the living tribunal. So that we've already had confirmation, but seeing the actual statue head of it, man, that's just so sick. Especially because the living tribunal is supposed to be like an OP, Omega level character. He basically can create or erase existence. He's like a Dr. Manhattan level character. So it's cool, another little Easter egg. Do I personally think we'll ever get to see him on the big screen? I'd say no. I think he's like a literal god, outside of time, outside of space, outside of everything. So I don't hold your breath for it, but it was cool to see a little Easter egg for him. So with that, let's move down to number 12. Another Easter egg for number 12, we have a Helicarrier. Crashed down on the floor, and there seems to be a huge red logo in the center. I was wondering if maybe that was a Hydra logo, or that Helicarrier got pruned in a separate timeline when Hydra ended up winning the events of Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So that'd be pretty cool to see, you know, that separate timeline. The thing with Loki is all of these different events come from separate timelines, and whenever you have separate timelines, you could just create brand new stories that don't necessarily have to affect the mainstream timeline, and just, you know, show how things would have happened if they went a certain way. So with that, let's move down to number 13. For number 13, we see classic Loki in his very finest. My man's use of projections is ridiculous. He literally creates almost all of Asgard right there. Out of sheer projection, sheer strength. And even Loki says, you know, to Sylvie, I think we very much underestimated our strength. And up until this point, I've never really seen Loki be like a very villainous character or very powerful character. I mean, if his brother is Thor, who can take the energy from a freaking dying star, and then there's Loki. Like there is a huge power imbalance, and now I feel like after today's episode, where moving down to 14, Loki learned how to do his enchantment. If he gets dropped off into another season, or they further explore his character, he's gonna have a lot of tricks up his sleeve with his new power creep, and I'm excited to see his character progression. So with that, let's move down to the very last part of the episode. Number 15. Number 15, we see Loki and Sylvie. They lock arms. Well, first they lock hands like this. That wasn't doing enough. It wasn't emotionally strength enough for them. So they lock them like this, and boom, my boy learns how to do an enchantment. They both use all their power together and enchant this big ass cloud monster, the Alioth, and cuts open the fog, and you see the actual place where the Timekeeper's headquarters is at the end of time, or whoever the hell is over there is in charge of this entire charade that the Timekeepers have been going through, and the TVA have been going through. So obviously they're gonna get there in the next episode, but I just gotta give big credit to my boy Loki. He's definitely stepping up his power creep on here. I love his relationship with Sylvie, and I definitely want to see them explore that more. But with that, I'm going to get into my top 5 questions moving into the finale next week. Let's get right into it. Question number 1, guys. Do you think Sylvie is going to survive the season? Personally, I really want her to survive. I love her character. I love her character interactions with Loki. I'm a big fan of her. Personally, I don't think she's going to make it, though. I have a theory that she might die, similarly to like how Loki sacrificed himself in Infinity War. She's going to sacrifice herself at the end of episode 6 to somehow allow him to survive and carry on with his storyline. Let me know what you guys think, though. Will she survive? Down to question number 2 now. Question number 2. Do you guys think Loki is going to make it back into the mainstream timeline? The sacred timeline, I guess we can call it. If so, how is he going to do it? Will the events of whatever happened in the finale make him go back and live out his life in the events that we've seen up into his death? Or is he going to be able to take a temp pad, fast forward into current MC Marvel time, and just live out the rest of his days with Thor and come back to see him for Thor Love and Thunder? Is he going to go into a separate timeline and do his own thing? What do you guys think? Let me know. With that, let's move down to question number 3. Question number 3, what do you guys think is going to happen with Mobius? Is Mobius going to stick around and maybe be in Loki season 2, or the events that are going to take place if Loki makes it into the mainstream timeline? What is going to happen with Mobius' character? Is he just going to ride away in the sunset on his jet ski and we're never going to see him again? Let me know. What are your theories about Mobius? With that, let's move down to question number 4. Question number 4, I already briefly talked about. Do you guys think Kang the Conqueror is behind all of this? If so, what is his endgame? What is he trying to do with this time manipulation stuff? And how will this create a series of events that will make him the next big bad within Marvel Phase 5 or 6? If it's not Kang the Conqueror, I want to know in the comments, guys, who do you guys think is behind this whole shit? So let's go down to the last question. Question number 5. Question number 5. How do you guys think the finale of Loki is going to tie into the next upcoming MCU project? And here's what I'm thinking. Whatever happens in the finale, Loki and Sylvie, I guess, end up destroying this time void, TVA. They erase them from existence, whatever. Do you think that's going to allow there to be a breach in the multiverse that's going to have explanations for Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, or even Spider-Verse? Let's say they do something and there's a breach in the multiverse, and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are able to come into our Earth, our MCU mainstream timeline, and that is how we get Spider-Verse, and that's why we get them coming over and potentially doing the things that they're doing within Spider-Man 3. Who knows? I was just thinking, theory crafting. I was going crazy with these ideas. So let me know what you guys think. How will the finale of Loki tie into the next MCU project? That's all I have for today, guys. We have Black Widow coming out today. I'm going to go checking it out with my fiance and a couple friends. So keep an eye out for that video. As always, you can best support the channel by leaving a like, sharing, and subscribing. If you want to personally chat with me, you can follow me at Mr. Jalapeno 13 on Instagram and hit me up with any questions you guys have, either about Loki, about Black Widow, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm here to talk. Well, that's all I have for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.